Good evening and welcome to the webinars at Wharton Arts, featuring artists of different disciplines making authentic connections between art and life through the sharing of stories, expertise, and creations. My name is Helen Chapio, Artistic Director of Wharton Institute for the Performing Arts and the curator and the host of the webinar series. Wharton Institute for the Performing Arts comprises the New Jersey Youth Symphony, Patterson Music Project, and the Performing Arts School. And as New Jersey's largest nonprofit performing arts education organization, we serve over 1,200 students of all ages and abilities through a range of classes and ensembles. Tonight, being our very last webinar of this year, I am thrilled to welcome our very special guest, Mr. Roberto Diaz. A violist of international reputation, Roberto Diaz is president and CEO of the Curtis Institute of Music, following in the footsteps of renowned soloists/directors such as Joseph Hoffman, Ephraim Zimbalist, and Rudolf Serkin. As a soloist, Mr. Diaz collaborates with leading conductors of our time on stages throughout the world. He has also worked directly with many important 20th and 21st century composers, including Penderecki, whose viola concerto he has performed numerous times with the composer on the podium, and whose double concerto he premiered in the United States. A frequent recitalist, Mr. Diaz enjoys collaborating with young musicians, bringing a fresh approach to the repertoire and providing invaluable opportunities to artists at the beginning of their careers. In addition to performing with major string quartets and pianists in chamber music series and festivals worldwide, he is a member of the Diaz Trio. His recordings, including a Grammy-winning performance of the Jennifer Higdon Viola Concerto and a Grammy-nominated disc of viola transcriptions by William Primrose for Naxos, and releases on many other record labels. In addition to his decade-long tenure as principal viola of the Philadelphia Orchestra, Mr. Diaz was also principal viola of the National Symphony under Rostropovich and was a member of the Boston Symphony and the Minnesota Orchestra. He is a graduate of the New England Conservatory of Music and the Curtis Institute of Music, where he continues to serve on the faculty as chair in viola studies, as well as serving as the president of the Institute. Mr. Diaz plays the ex Primrose Amati viola. So please help me welcome Mr. Diaz. And I just want to really thank you for joining us tonight. So let me see if I can, there you are. It is so great to have you tonight, and thank you so much for spending this really busy Monday evening with us. And we have over 100 young musicians joining us tonight, and also some community members, musicians, teachers. And so we are so thrilled to be spending this hour with you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, and I'm very excited for our chat.
Yeah, and usually I start by asking our guests when and where and how their musical journeys all started. But tonight, I want to start from the present right now and ask you to reach back to your past to help us understand how you got here, doing what you're doing right now, and to perhaps ask you to share some important life lessons that you have learned along the way. And we have a lot of seniors this year graduating high school and embarking on their new chapter in college. And so maybe help us to look ahead by sharing some of your hopes and dreams for the future, as many of our young musicians are really thinking about that. So without further ado, let me just jump right in. Here's some of our questions for you. And so you are the head of a school called Curtis Institute of Music, which accepts 4% on the average, 4% of applicants each year. And the tuition-free program ensures that talent and artistic promise are the only considerations for admission. So I want to ask on behalf of our students, how does one become the president and CEO of Curtis Institute of Music? What are the qualifications for such position?
Well, that's a very interesting question. It's an interesting thing to think about, because Curtis in many ways is a little bit different than a lot of other music schools, in that if you look back at the history of the school, which is now 96 years, Curtis is turning 100 in just a few years. Curtis has always been run by an active musician, an active performer. And so I think that alone already sets it apart, or makes it a different kind of place. Because, at Curtis, everybody in the faculty really is like an active performer. And so in the administration, especially for the position of president, I think it's really important also, it has always been for the Board of Trustees, to have somebody who not only understands the life that the young students are going to go into or want to go into, but actually is a practicing member, if you will, of this life. Not a retired necessarily member of this career path.
It really kind of keeps you in touch with what you have to teach. It really kind of keeps you in touch with, the people that, you are taking care of.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that Curtis students expect their teachers to be able to not just speak about what they want the students to learn, but actually to be able to demonstrate. And, there's a certain level of appreciation that comes from seeing your teachers on stage, whether it is playing a recital, playing chamber music, standing in front of an orchestra, or participating in an orchestra. And so I think that, that has always been a very interesting thing about the school, because when we choose new faculty members, we're always looking for folks that are really at the very top of their careers. They're really sort of at the zenith of their instrument, if you will, or their disciplines. And so this has made it so that the school in its entire history has always kind of had this sort of virtuous circle, if you will, of, the best faculty members, attract the best students, which attract the best faculty, which attracts the best students. And so it's been a very interesting thing to see over the years. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, my first experience with Curtis was as a student. And so I understood what it meant to come to a school and to study with people. Michael Tree was teaching viola then, when I was studying. Joe Di Pasquale was a great principal violist of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And Karen Tuttle was an incredible violist herself when she was young. And so for us who came to study viola at Curtis, we had this amazing array of incredible talent.
Yeah. I mean, but that's kind of almost to be expected right now. But I'm talking about the head of the school, right? The CEO, the president. We don't often think about that position being artist, active performer / administrator. So I think that's what's peculiar about that. Yeah.
But what's interesting is that I have to say, I have a lot of help. I have a lot of people that, you have to surround yourself with really great people, and folks that are specialized in finance, and people that specialize in, the operation and so forth. And so, my job in a sense is a little bit more like the job of the music director, if you will. We have a dean that is, very mindful and in charge of all of the academic part of the school. So, the dean is sort of the chief academic officer. And so, the school is really set up in a way that it makes it possible for me as president and CEO. Of course, as they say, the buck stops here, and somebody has to make the decisions and be responsible for what happens or doesn't happen. But you do surround yourself with people that are really talented, really able, and really are first class at what they do. And that also gives me the possibility to sneak away from time to time to do what it is that got me to where I am in the first place. And that's playing the viola, whether it's chamber music or a solo concert or recitals or so forth. And so,
yeah, and I think that's really kind of what makes this job very unique, right? And to have the title of CEO, not just the president of the school. And so, we were kind of wondering about that, but also the reason why perhaps you got this job is because you're a world-renowned violist. You're the principal, violist of Philadelphia Orchestra. And I wonder, that being one of the criterias. And I just wanted to tag another question, like what part of your position right now would you say that you got trained at school? Other than being a musician, being a CEO, I'm sure you didn't get that from a conservatory, did you?
No. But it's interesting, leadership, we develop leadership skills, as we go along through life. And I think common sense goes a very long way. I think that we learn, I learned from being principal viola in Washington and also, in Philadelphia, that at the end of the day, you lead by example. And so if you want to lead an institution and have people, behave a certain way and see things from a certain perspective, then you have to demonstrate that you are able to do that and that you are, consistent in how you do that, and that you have certain values and that you lead from, the value system that you have, and that, you have integrity to sort of stay the course. And, I think that, at Curtis, the school, which has a tremendous tradition, at the same time has become a place that's very comfortable with innovation and with change and with looking towards the future and to experimenting with things. And so I think that that's been a very interesting thing to see, because especially for an institution that is so successful, you could make the argument, well, if it's not broke, why mess with this, But I think that, as an institution, the school has really been able to take advantage, if you will, of the fact that as the world around us changes, then the way we educate future generations of musicians then needs to evolve with that. There are different skills that musicians need to have. There are different, you have to be aware of your surroundings in a different way. I think you have to have a certain, aptitude and attitude towards, engagement with your local community and, with future generations. And so, I think that one of the most important things we can do as artists and as human beings is to teach. I mean, to teach is how we keep our civilization moving forward, and if you will. And so I think you see that, the school has tremendously gifted faculty members, but they're all incredibly devoted in passing this, these histories and these traditions, and also the way we look towards the future, and to the next generations, to future generations of incredibly talented young people, and to teaching them also leadership skills. And you're right. I mean, there was not a course on CEO that I ever took, but I think that, what I learned from being in a position of leadership in orchestras, and also, I've always had an interest in things outside of music. When I was, before I went to college in music, I took a year to get a degree in industrial design, which was like architecture and drawing and things like that. And
sure,
we did a lot of very different things when I took architecture when I was in high school also. And so this was a continuation of that, if you will. But you never know, because, when we built Lenfest Hall, which is our new building and, down the street from our original building, a degree in industrial design came in very handy.
I bet.
Especially when we had to argue with the architects and stand our, on our convictions, if you will.
You had the right vocabulary, at least to talk to them, right?
I knew how to read blueprints, which was a very important thing.
That's really fascinating, right? A lot of the parents would say, "Hey, do something as a fallback to music. If you want to go into music, study something else." I'm not sure, if that's the way to go. Only because you seem to be really passionate about that. That's why you studied, and look where sometimes it creeps in, and you can use that skill. So let me ask you to kind of reflect on where things are right now. We are in the middle of this global pandemic. How have you demonstrated leadership by example? Staying positive, I would think it would be one thing, because it's such a difficult time for performing arts. So what has your year been as a leader of a music school? And what are kind of the life, lessons that you've learned through this pandemic time?
Never waste a good crisis.
I'm quoting that.
That saying is just so, and we've really gone into this unforeseen, unpredictable, unexpected situation and said, how can we turn this into a positive? And I think that, yes, it's been very difficult for us to pivot very quickly as an institution and as people to teaching online. And so, but I mean, it's been amazing to see how incredibly productive, adaptable, forward-looking everybody has been. And you have professors that are in their 90s, teaching over the internet and actually doing really well with it, and you realize that young people learn differently. In some ways, they learn better. They take more sense of ownership for how they're doing it, because they're not coming to this traditional where, for 1 hour, they stand in front of the teacher, they play something, the teacher says, do it this way, and let's see what happens next week. Now it's a little different. You don't hear quite as well. And so you have to kind of be a little bit more self-sufficient. And honestly, those are the skills we want to develop. You have to teach people to teach themselves.
Right.
Because eventually when you leave school, you have to trust your instincts, and you have to trust that you've developed these skills, and that you trust what you're hearing. You trust your ability to analyze what you're hearing and compare it to what you want to hear. And how do you get from here to there? And so it actually has kind of put a different view, if you will. It's kind of changed the perspective of how we look at that relationship with the student, and also the sense of ownership that a student takes for how they learn. And one of the things that I've talked about, and I've done this myself, again, if I wouldn't do it myself, then I certainly wouldn't ask my students to do it. But I've sort of, I haven't played a single concert in, I don't know,
14 months,
14, 15 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And, all of the concerts that I had in the last year and some months are all, postponed, they're rescheduled, and they'll happen, next season and so forth. But it's really given me a time to kind of step back a little bit, not having to think about, well, but I have a concert next week, so I'm not going to do. And I've actually started to kind of rethink how I play from a mechanical way, just technical ways. And so I've had the luxury to spend time, thinking about things that I just don't have time to do normally, and so now I'm starting to be able to apply some of these things, some of these little tricks that I've taught myself, with the bow and with my left hand and so forth. And so I've actually talked to my students about doing a lot of that same kind of work, like analyze what you're doing. You don't have the audition coming up. You don't have the competition coming up. You don't have the recital coming up. So let's take the time to really, and talk to me about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how it's going. And it's been really interesting to see how this has given us this opportunity when, in a sense, I sort of said, the clock stopped.
Yeah, sure did.
we're sort of on borrowed time here. It's time, it's like free time, not borrowed time. It's like free time, and so, of course, we all want to get back to in person and having a more normal life and concert life and so forth. But it's been a really interesting time to see what other things we can do when we don't have some of these pressures that keep us on a schedule, if you will.
Right.
So as an institution, we've started to do exactly some of the same things. An example is 1726, which is the old Curtis building, the original building on the corner of Rittenhouse Square. Since the building has been empty for a year, we decided to do the renovation that we were hoping to do.
You couldn't do when the students are in there.
Like a little bit this summer, a little bit this summer, a little bit this summer, over like 3 or 4 years. We're just doing it.
Yeah.
And so when we all come back together again, the building is going to be as it was when it was brand new, but with state-of-the-art equipment. So that's been sort of the mindset, if you will. What can we do and what opportunities present themselves? And actually, we've hired some incredibly fantastic faculty members because of the fact that nobody's been playing concerts. And so people have sort of reassessed how they want to go back into concert life. And it's given us an opportunity to bring in some incredible artists, the Dover Quartet, Yefim Bronfman, the pianist, and, some great, as a matter of fact, now all of the forward momentum with technology has made it possible for us to bring someone to the faculty who lives in Europe.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing this with you. For you to have to drive to New Jersey, your schedule may not have allowed you to talk to our students. And so we are totally experiencing the silver linings of this digital platform. And I think we're going to continue to embrace it going forward, right?
Absolutely. We've realized that there are so many ways that we can actually make the Curtis experience for our faculty, for our students, for our staff, a little bit different, where we take advantage of some of the efficiencies that come from this. Some people say, look, maybe I'll just come in to work 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I'll work from home. And well,
sure,
it's worked.
and I think what's going to be really interesting is a platform like Zoom and other platforms will have to catch up on making the sound better for us, right? Because we are using it so much. And we are really demanding, like, oh my goodness, please improve the sound, and I think the desire and the creativity, working with the technology, we're going to advance each other, right, together. And I think that's what's really exciting.
You know what they say, necessity is the mother of invention.
That's right.
So absolutely. We're using Clean Feed. Which we pair with Zoom, and it's perfect. The synchronicity between the sound and the pictures, and in most cases, you need it on both sides.
Okay.
But it's just basically an email that I send from Clean Feed. I send an invitation to my student. They open the email, they go into Clean Feed, and then you turn off your Zoom sound and you're listening, and it's really actually quite good.
We're gonna have to try that. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Clean Feed.
Clean Feed. Initially, I heard it as Clean Feet, so I went, ooh. Got it. But that's really great. So, making this terrible situation a new opportunity, and how we respond to crisis in life. Like you said, never waste a crisis, never waste so-called failure, rejections. It's a college time right now. Today was the acceptance, kind of the college committing day. So I know a lot of the schools and high school students are wearing their sweatshirts of the school that they're going. And, so a lot of our students have experienced really disappointments, a lot of disappointments. What do you say about that? I mean, I know this was a global pandemic, and it's easier for us to say, well, hey, listen, everybody's going through it. But when you have lots of auditions, I mean, with the New Jersey Youth Symphony students and students in Wharton Arts, I would say maybe only 10% or less than 10% of our students actually go into music conservatory. And the rest of them are doing something else, but using life lessons that they learn in music to propel themselves in other fields, in their lives. So I talk a lot about how you respond to these rejection letters. I didn't make it to this audition. I didn't make it to this Ivy League school. The list goes down on and on and on. We had to cancel 2 Italian trips that we had with our youth symphony. Just a lot of memories lost. What do you say to that?
I think that I tend to be a little bit, I've always thought no one ever gets everything they want. And I think that, there's a life lesson in there always, and things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. I think that, getting into, top colleges, top music schools and so forth has become so much more difficult, so much more competitive. But yet, if you look, there are wonderful teachers everywhere. And at the end of the day, what's going to make you who you end up being is going to be who you study with, not so much where you studied with them. And so I think that, if you, as a music student, if you find, a really great teacher, somebody, it doesn't matter where they are.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And, to a certain degree, ending up at a school where you are allowed to have a little bit more freedom, you get more performing opportunities, you get, the possibility of maybe playing with the faculty more than you would at a, sort of bigger school and things like that. I mean, the benefits of that can be just life-changing over, and so I think that, while it's easy to say, well, I wish I would have been able to go here or to study with so-and-so, sometimes, people get into the school they want, but they don't get the teacher they really wanted. Right. And so do you go there anyway? And I would say you should go study with the person that you really want to study with. And so I think that, that's advice that I give, my students all the time, because a lot of times I encourage them after Curtis to go and have a different experience. And mm-hmm. So, we never really talk about where, we talk about who. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that it would be really good for you to be around this person for a year or two.
Right. And who would you, I mean, and I think that mentorship, having somebody that you can call, not just a teacher, not just an instructor, but somebody who really made a huge impact, in who you are, and just kind of turn you inside out, and changes or opens up kind of what you're thinking about, what your perspectives are, and all of that. I know we didn't talk so much about kind of your childhood, and a lot of people say, we all kind of can think back and think about a few people that really made you feel so good about yourself and, affirmed. On the other hand, there could be some negative things that you've heard, but whatever it may be, it shapes you, right? Who do you say that person was, or those folks who have shaped you early on? I know you didn't, you weren't born here in this country.
I have to say, I mean, for me still today, to this day, I talk to my parents all the time.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. I have two sons, and that's really great to hear.
I mean, I really, I saw, my father, I was born in Chile. My father uh, came with his family when my dad was three years old, I think, when they left Spain. He's Spanish. During the Civil War, they left Spain and they came to Chile, and they started from nothing, basically, and my grandfather became, a very successful businessman. He was, the CEO of a corporation at one point. And my father, like my mother, were the first musicians ever in their families. And, my dad came to the States. He's a violist. He studied with Primrose, actually, and at Indiana, and was a very successful violist in Chile after that. And then we picked up and moved again, this time to the States.
And how old were you when you came here?
I was about 12 when we moved to the States. And so, we basically started again from scratch, and my dad played in the orchestra in Atlanta, the Atlanta Symphony, for a number of years, and he started to teach. And, he also has a degree in architecture.
Did you know about all this as you are going following his footsteps?
I saw him do this, and it was something that I was interested in. And my dad for a while was playing in the symphony, and also was working at a drafting firm, making technical drawings and things like that. And so that's how I got interested in that.
I see.
And he always said to me, look, in music, it's a wonderful career, but not much has to happen to you and all of a sudden you may not be able to play, like a little accident in the tip of a finger, and it's not a big deal at all, but all of a sudden that's it.
Yeah.
So do you have something that you can fall back on? And when I was young and I was growing up in Chile, of course, I wanted to be a soccer player, and like all of my buddies, and I mean, I grew up with soccer, and that was what life was all about. And then when we came to the States, music became more important. We all studied music at home, because my parents, both being musicians, they knew that, it was the education that counted. It was the discipline that counted. It was there are no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. You're right.
And look, fast forward many years later, and I would hear Aaron Rosand here at Curtis, saying there are no shortcuts to being a great violinist. There just aren't any shortcuts.
It's one of the most honest kind of a form of art. Either you know how to do this or you don't. Can't fake it.
There's no running around to becoming a great pianist or a great singer. I mean, you have to really put in the work, and I think that those are great life lessons. And you develop a love for the arts and for what the arts and music can do for people and how they bring people together and they build community. And look, the fact is we don't talk about this enough, I don't think, but when we cannot explain what just happened, we turn to music.
Yeah.
I mean, at 9/11, when these buildings collapsed, how do you rationalize, explain things like that? With what has happened with the pandemic, I mean, people need what we do more now than ever. And so, going back to a comment that you made at the very beginning, how do I feel about, the place of music in society? And I'm incredibly optimistic, because it's not a luxury, it's a complete necessity. And so I do think that we musicians can be, very stuck on tradition, and there's a certain element of beauty in that. But I think that we need to become more adaptable. And I think that you see that really successful musicians are doing a lot of different things.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah.
in a sense, for me to do this other thing that I do, this day job, if you will, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
it's just, I think that we have to go into the world, with an open mind and say, well, why not? Let's try this, see what happens.
Yes. And I
And
think we have to be much more, passionate ambassadors of that very message. I think we shy away from it. People, we do, music for life, right? But also, we talk about in youth orchestras, who are our audience members? Our parents, our grandparents, and aunts and uncles come, but not often our students' peers come. And I say, what do you tell your friend, best buddy who could care less about music, but you connect because you're both into science? How would you talk about what you are feeling up there playing so passionately when you're playing these phrases? How do you talk about that to bring them in and say, hey, check it out, right? I think that's, we fail to kind of make them the salespeople that we should be about this message.
well, and that's an excellent point, because one of the things that we are really talking about a lot at school is that it's not just about being a great musician, but it's also being an incredibly, uh, energized and inspired advocate for what you do and for the value of what you do. It shouldn't just be Yo-Yo Ma talking about the value of music. It should be us talking about, the rest of us talking about the value of music. Because,
Right.
And look, we say this, I say this all the time. No one will inspire a young person like a young person.
That's right.
I mean, when you tell your buddy, listen, this is really cool. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Everybody loves music. It's just that they listen to different types of music. But nobody really says, no, I don't like that. They just don't have any experience with it. We like what we know.
Right. Right. And I think, the taking these risks. But one thing that I do realize, and I tell my students, is that if you look at the top level, people who have totally conquered their instrument, right? Not learning how to play Tchaikovsky, but learning how to play the viola first, right? And then, I say you have to be one with your instrument. But when you can be that, then you can be so flexible. You can play any kind of style of music because you have the technical facility to be able to do that. And I think with our young people, with the technology, the way things are, it's inevitable. We have to come together, right? Creativity and the beauty of this natural sound with sharing through technology. And, it's incredible watching our young students make that connection. And I want to ask you, at a school such as Curtis, but in any universities, the classical music, a lot of people ask, what's the future of classical music? I mean, you have to be very optimistic because you're running a school, and I am too. But I think there's something that we have to really do. It can't just be in the pure form, one way from the stage to the audience. Here, you'll sit there very quietly and listen, right? It just doesn't work. And so where is the innovation? Where the cultural intersection, the diversity issue that we're really dealing with in American orchestras? The fact that, Black and brown musicians are really not represented as much, right? They're very underrepresented. Doesn't mean that there's a lack of talent, for sure. Putting all of this together with kind of your hope and your vision for the future, what are some of the things that our young people should do, as a musician, whether they are going to go into professional music world or just as an amateur musician who plays really at a high level? What do you say to them?
Well, I think that the place where we, those of us who are older can help is by helping create access.
Mhm.
I think that, when young people have the exposure to something, then they will accept it. They will say, wow, I really like that. I mean, I can tell you, for example, when I used to play family concerts or children's concerts with Philly, with Boston, with Washington, any orchestra, a lot of times, in the school concerts, you have a lot of young people, and they start to fidget a little bit, and they get a little bit sort of distracted, and they're, talking to their buddies and, pushing each other and stuff, until the young soloist comes out. When the young soloist comes out, they're like,
yes,
they're glued. They're just
yes,
like glued to this person, whether it's a violinist or whether it's a pianist or a percussionist, whatever it is. They are just kind of like
mesmerized.
I didn't know that somebody my age could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's exposure,
Right.
I think that's where we can help, is to create more access, and I think that, for young people to understand that it's not just about what's in it for them, but it's what their gifts and their actions are doing for others. They have to understand. Like I didn't, as a young person, I didn't know that, playing the viola was going to benefit anybody other than me. I was like, well, I guess I'll do this. I'm not going to play soccer, so I guess I'll play the viola. So but then you start to realize, and I mean, it does. I've had some very interesting conversations about sort of the three stages of how we transition through these three stages in our lives. The first is you have to fall in love with something. You fall in love with playing the violin or playing soccer or skateboarding or whatever it is,
right.
Playing the piano, singing, so, our responsibility as parents is to expose our kids to things, and all of a sudden they'll like say, I really love poetry, or I really love, playing the flute. Great. So just let them fall in love with this. And then comes the sort of the years of complete self-absorption. It's you, your flute, and nothing else matters. And it's just about you and your flute, and the rest of the world doesn't matter. Yeah? And eventually, and those are kind of like your sort of, especially the college years, we kind of call them the Curtis years. You're just sort of completely self-absorbed. It's fine. We understand that. But then as you start to transition out of school, you kind of pivot in a sense to, now how am I going to use this? And that's when you kind of pivot to the outside, and you say, oh, wait a minute. This is actually something that is not just for my benefit. This actually benefits others. It makes people feel differently. It makes them feel good. I can actually do a lot of good with this.
Yeah.
And I can have a life doing this, which I'm really fortunate to be able to do, to make a living with something that I actually love doing.
Right. But competition gets very tight. All depends where you want to do and how you want to use music. But I wonder, using your three stages, it makes me think about, because I'm really passionate about having sense of mission at a young age. What am I doing is not only going to benefit me, but it's really important in this life because it benefits people around me. And I wonder, in that second stage, or even younger, like the high school students, when we energize them to say, hey, practice hard, let's get this thing really right? And have these, a briefcase filled with just wonderful music that you can just open up your violin case and play anywhere beautifully, right? So that you can be the gift, the messenger. I mean, our year is called Messengers of Hope. We are naming all of our students. You are the messengers of hope during this really difficult time. And we did a whole bunch of home-made videos and collages together and sending it to local older adults communities with a message of hope. We hope you're well and here enjoy our musicians all safely at home making music by themselves and, that kind of thing. I really see this transformation in the rest of their lives. And so I just wonder if we could begin that even earlier,
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, this situation that we're living in has kind of made us realize that it's never too soon to start to appreciate how much good you can do with what you've chosen to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And musicians are actually, in a sense, it's different than a lot of, our peers, because, many young adults don't really know what direction their life is going to go into after like their second year of college or their third year of college. Well, for most of us musicians, you kind of figured that out when you're like 8 years old, and so I think that it is possible. And I think that it will, in many cases, reinforce this love affair that you have with this instrument if you realize that not only does it make you feel great, but you can actually make others.
Yeah.
Way. And so it's like, wow, who would have thunk that,
Yeah.
And so I think that, again, it's on us to, sort of instill that sense of, humanity and opportunity and worth and, just worldliness in a sense, being aware of, how you fit into this complex ecosystem that we live in.
And I think orchestra teaches that, right?
Absolutely.
Orchestra. Yeah, you are a small part, a very important part of this great.
It's a team sport.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean,
it really is.
You have to hold up your end of the bargain, but you depend on everybody else doing the same.
Right, but there are no losers, we say.
Oh, it's great. It's great. I mean,
everyone wins in music here when you're part of that. Yeah.
What you learn from that is incredible because look, you learn when in a string section, you learn to rely on the people that are around you.
Yeah.
When you play as many concerts as we used to, I mean, 4 times a week, we would repeat the same program and you feel different every night. Sometimes you concentrate incredibly well and sometimes it's difficult and you need, to rely on those around you to be, helping, when you need the help. And so I think it's the complexity of the relationships within a group like that teach you a lot of life lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Look at the skills you develop in a chamber music set.
Oh, that's the best life lessons, don't you think? Yeah.
How do you give it criticism? How you accept criticism? And are you going to talk to people in a way that you wouldn't want to be spoken to? And so, I mean, the skills that you develop from that are, you'd wish that some people in Washington D.C. would have developed some of those. Those skills.
Toward the common goal, right? Really upholding what the intention of the composer is and presenting this as beautifully as you can.
There is a higher objective than just getting your way.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings us to some of the questions that, our students are asking. We talk a lot about having a mission statement in your life, even though you may be young, some sort of a philosophy that you live by. You can call it a core value system. You wake up and there are certain things that about yourself that is important. Were there anything, we develop it throughout our lives and it changes and all that. What would be, if you had to say one kind of a philosophy in your life or the principle that you live by, what would that be? And how have you come to embrace that?
I think that there are a couple of words that I think are very important to me. One is resilience,
Hmm.
and
We are all experiencing that.
yeah, I mean, you have to kind of dig deep sometimes,
Yeah.
because you just can't explain sometimes why am I having to deal with this.
Hmm.
And so I think learning to be resilient is a very, very important attribute to have. And I think that learning to be grateful, you
Mm.
know, are I think it's, and we see this, in life, not just in musicians, but we see it with people that, it's always what someone else has, or why so and so got this, or why so and so has that, and why don't I have, and we forget to be sometimes grateful for what we do have, and I think that,
I like the way you said learning to be grateful.
yeah.
I want you to unpack that a little bit, because that implies we don't naturally, are
Well,
grateful at times,
we
right?
may not think about it. We may not think about it. We're very busy thinking about, Susie got a new something or other. Why don't I, and Joey got, an opportunity that, I wish I had. And,
Mhm.
and we tend to sort of take the opportunities or what we have for granted, but we're just focused on what other people are getting. And look, you see that sometimes with musicians too. They're wondering why so and so is getting to play a concert that you wish you would have gotten to play, or so and so. Why does so and so have the career they do, and I'm not having the career I was hoping I would have? And
Mhm.
and it's hard sometimes to not focus on some of the really great things that we're we're all doing.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I tell our young students who gets really upset based on the seating audition, I say, whether you're in the back of the section or in the front of the section, you're playing the same Tchaikovsky symphony. Is anything different? you
well,
know,
there's a certain element of responsibility, sometimes being the concert master,
sure,
that
absolutely, right.
puts a an added complexity and level of stress that you may not necessarily want. you know uh,
Right. But if you want it and you went for it and you didn't get it, does that mean that, you're going to play less of a Tchaikovsky symphony that, you are called to play? No, right? We need to step up and lead from where you are, no matter where you are, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, you can enjoy yourself sitting in the back in a way that you almost can't quite as much, because you have to be so much more disciplined when you're sitting in the front. And in the back, you could just play your heart out, and if you're not in exactly the same part of the bow every single time you play that passage, it doesn't matter as much. But when you're sitting in a position where you have to show that you are incredibly reliable, dependable, you will never not come in, you will never come in the wrong place, so there are so many other factors. And in the back, of course, you have to be mindful of what's going on, but you can enjoy yourself differently.
Yeah,
And so
right. It's,
there's
yeah.
an upside, it's a balance. And I think that the last thing you would want is to get the responsibility of being concertmaster when you may not necessarily be completely ready for it.
Ready. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But let me tell you, we look to the Philadelphia Orchestra, the legendary string section, and I bet we could hardly ever find anyone not playing in the same part of the bow. You always go and watch, these Philadelphia Orchestra, string section. And whenever the bowing is available, this is the bowing that we purchase. This is what's going on in youth orchestras. I want you to know.
Sure, of course. Yeah, well, we use some of those parts too.
Yeah, it's great.
We're
Wow,
tested
this is
fire.
This has been such, I can't believe we're almost at the end of this session. And there's one final question that, I want to ask on behalf of all of our students who have submitted, a kind of a fun question. It's a typical question a lot of high schoolers ask, looking back to your high school years, your senior year, wherever you were. What do you wish that you had known then, that you know now, that you might be able to share and give them a little bit of a heads up? Is there something that comes to your mind when it comes to that? It's a typical kind of commencement speech question, isn't it?
I think that we all tend to, and I certainly, when I was in high school, I was very good at making plans and making predictions and saying, okay, I want to do this, and if I do it right, it's going to produce that, and if I produce that, then I'll be able to get this. You
have a flow chart, perfect flow chart.
Very sort of clear process with goals, attached to them, and then I realized that embracing the unexpected is actually a really good thing. And I mean, I would have never ever have predicted that I would end up doing what I do today. It was just like it's completely outside of the realm of even imagination, nor did I have even the slightest interest in doing what I do today. But when the trustees at Curtis asked me to consider this responsibility of running the school, my first reaction was like, well, I don't do that. And they said, well, we think you've got some of the right skills, some of the right attitude, and at Curtis we have the saying, you learn from doing.
Yeah, isn't that true?
You learn by doing, and so I think that it's really good to get away from that sort of, oh, I would never do that, or oh no, not me, never, because you never know. You just never know. And I think that keeping your eyes open for, we say, one of the things that I tell the students at Curtis also is that my hope as the person responsible for their education is that we give them the kind of education that will allow them to go out and invent a career.
A career. Love that.
It's like, what does that look like? And how do you define success? What is success? Because we've been very traditional about what success means.
Yeah.
But I think that now we've started to see that, you can be incredibly successful doing things that are completely unexpected. And so, embrace the unexpected is something that I think is really important. And when I was certainly living in my high school times, I never thought about anything like that. And so, when you go to school, who you associate with, people that are different than you, people that are, sometimes that's a great benefit of going to a university as opposed to going to a conservatory, because you're surrounded by people that do unbelievably different things. And that's actually a very good thing, I think. And so, to embrace the unexpected and to open yourself up to, new experiences, I think it's just, there is no downside to that at all.
That's great. That's wonderful. Don't waste a crisis, and embrace embrace the unexpected. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom that you have gathered throughout your life's journey. And we just wish you all the best at Curtis. And, we hope to perhaps have a chance to share the stage with our New Jersey Youth Symphony players, perhaps. I know you like to play with young people, and teaching us by example.
Happy to do it. Anytime.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. And this wraps it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.